Hey guys, Alex with the Artifact Company here with you again today. And I thought I'd do a short little public service announcement about gray ghosts, aka Reinhardt specials. So for years we've gotten in what are known as gray ghosts. People have had these things on display in their collection for years, not knowing that they were mass-produced fakes sometimes between 1950 and 1985. When someone would send a piece in, we would include a copy of this article by Dane Martin. This was originally published in a magazine called Chips that DC Waldorf was involved with. And it explains exactly how Mr. Reinhardt actually would make these pieces, clamp them in a jig. It shows how they're made from a slab. Okay, so what is a gray ghost? Well, this guy named Bryan Reinhardt, back in the shortly after World War II, probably around the time of the Korean War, came up with a way of making arrowheads by taking a diamond tile saw and cutting flint into slabs like this. Now, this is a slab of Sonora flint. Okay, I don't know if you can see this on the screen, but you can actually see the curve of the big circular blade that as it cuts through the flint. Okay, and these slabs end up being about 1/2 to maybe 3/8 of an inch thick. Okay, later, after he made the slab, he would start to knock flakes out of it. Okay, until he had gone all the way down one edge and would come all the way down the other edge. Now, these blanks were clamped. Take this sticker off. These blanks were clamped in a vise. If you can see this little line here of step fractures? These were clamped in a vise, so when these flakes came off, the clamp had it so tight that it wouldn't allow the flake to continue, so most flakes would stop more or less in a line. And if you talk to a professional napper that does this by hand and doesn't use a jig or a clamping device of any kind, it's very hard to do that freehand, okay, to get the flake to fully stop. The amount of clamping pressure that's on there causes that flake to stop. Now, the whole point of knocking these flakes off the surface was to remove these saw marks. Okay, now later on the piece, when he's doing these big broad flakes to take off across the blade face, the purpose of that is to remove the saw marks. However, it's impossible to remove all of them in most cases, and under the microscope, we'll show you in just a little bit, there will be a high stack here, somewhere else on the piece that still shows those marks from the saw. The next step, once he made a big long blank, is to do the edge work. And when he would do the edge work, he would just do some real fine, short little flakes along the edges, usually at a pretty steep angle, as you can see here. See how steep that angle is there and how consistent that thickness is? That's one of the hallmarks of these blades. And if you can see on this piece is practically the same thickness no matter where on the blade you want to measure it, except within the margins of where that edge work was done. He could make dovetails. This happens to be a base tang knife. Here's a dovetail version. Again, flat as a pancake. You have the step fractures that stop in a line showing where the jig actually was on this piece, and you have this very narrow double bevel resharpening pattern just to do the external shaping of the piece. Okay, this piece measures 11 3/4 inches, by the way. Here's another one. It wasn't just Bryan Reinhardt that did this technique. Okay, this article actually mentions Richard Warren by name as another contemporary of Reinhardt's that did things similar to him. Again, this piece is slab sawn. You can tell by the consistent thickness of it. and when we find the slab marks, the remaining slab marks on this piece later, it will confirm that. This also has the resharpening pattern. These things end up all over the place. We've seen them from practically 50 states, and even some museums have these things on display. This is one that I happen to have on my desk here at the office that's been hafted into a nice handle, and it's got a little display for folks that want to check it out. Most Bryan Reinhardt gray ghosts are going to be made out of this material. This is Pedernales River Chert, comes out of Central Texas. It's a variety of Edwards. It'll have little white freckles throughout the material, and occasionally, here's a better example of the freckles. See the freckles? And occasionally the freckles alongside, well, there will be a red inclusion. Now Reinhardt didn't just make dovetails and lost legs and other pieces. He did try to get into fluted points at one point along the way, but they're not particularly good examples, and they're relatively easy to discern. Now, why am I talking about this from the standpoint of these things being all over the world? Well, I may have to blur this out, but here's a publication from the 1960s, 1970s, showing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Reinhardt reproductions, accompanied by, now illegal, a human skull. This gentleman published this book to talk about collecting artifacts in Oregon. So you expect to see a lot of Oregon bird points and things like that, but what you don't expect to see is something like that. This is another type of reproduction we'll get into in another video. These all look appropriate for the area. These are all obsidian and jaspers. Again, appropriate. These are Reinhardt style fakes. These big huge Thunderbirds that are the size of cowboy belt buckles, they're made by Reinhardt and his guys. This is a Reinhardt. 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 This, and this are by a guy named Marvin McCormick. That's the guy we're going to get into another day. Some additional reproduction gray ghosts pictured in this book. Look at the price tag. $50 to $125, up to 11.5 inches long. Come on now. Let's see here. A lot of good stuff in this guy's collection that looks appropriate for the area that he's from. I mean, come on, there's a nice little looking slave killer fragment right next to a Marvin McCormick fake Folsom. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. All of these are gray ghosts. This is a fantasy gray ghost, Reinhardt special as we call them, fantasy style blade. I call these the after Tussinger style because Tussinger was another famous hoaxer. Came up with this style of eccentric we'll get into in another video. Another gray ghost. So these things, it's understandable why people would continue to believe that these are real types, because they end up in books like this that are poorly researched. That's not right. But Reinhardt was kind of a unique guy, okay? Because he came up with this easy way to mass produce artifacts, it opened up a whole realm of flint knapping to various artists around the world. This is a great book, by the way, American Flint Knappers by John Whittaker. I recommend anyone who's concerned with having real artifacts get this book and his other book, Flint Knapping. so you really understand exactly what it is that you're looking at. Some of these guys have turned out just some fantastic material. A lot of this is done with what's now called lapidary flint knapping. Publications like this have popped up. Okay, I think Roy Miller just recently sold a dovetail for $35,000, signed by him. You got Woody Blackwell. Any number of modern flint knappers will continue to use Mr. Reinhardt's method, except in an improved way. This gentleman right here, Jim Hopper, has taken Reinhardt's method to new heights. In fact, my favorite piece in the shop right now is a Jim Hopper agate basin out of dyed Brazilian agate. These are different, but you can see the quality of the flaking on these pieces. They're different that instead of making a slab like this, they'll grind the bevels, the top and bottom bevels, so they get a nice diamond cross section in the piece. They'll grind everything to where all they have to do is remove a fine pressure flake off of the blade face, and you end up with a nearly perfect piece. Okay, enough hands-on, let's go look at the microscope. Okay guys, so we're back to this is the big 11 3/4 inch piece that we looked at earlier. So I'm going to show you where the slab mark is on this particular piece. They managed to get most of them off of this piece, but they did do some additional things like sand the edges down. Maybe it's the other side. Ah, there it is. Can you see that? That is a remnant of a sanding slab. Those striations right there. Okay. Now we'll go back to the sawn slab that we looked at earlier. This one, they made no attempt, obviously, to hide the striations. And you can see this nice gentle arc of the saw blade. Now what you probably didn't see, because it's fainter, is this was some of the original striations from the diamond saw. And here's the other side. Again, more curved striation marks, and then the finer marks. So I'm going to talk to you about lighting with your microscope for just a second. You'll notice that on this scope, the light is coming in at an angle. It's not coming straight down like with a ring light. It's not coming up from the bottom like with a stage light for looking at stuff in a petri dish. This lighting is called oblique lighting. And you'll notice it's only coming from one direction. I don't have it canceling each other out on the other side. That's because we want to see this reflective glare on the surface, because if you're not looking at the glare, you can't see these striations. Okay? If I turn it so the glare goes away, hey, you see the nice pretty flint, but the striations are almost impossible now to see. As soon as you turn it back towards the light, instantly visible. Okay? So that's very important if you're looking at pieces. I'm going to show you a couple other pieces. This is a Bill Wyatt fake. This is a napper out of Hopkinsville, Kentucky. He used to make hornstone points that would turn gray just by leaving them in the drawer for a couple of years. And you can see here this entire ridge is obliterated and striated. This one is obliterated and striated. This one is obliterated and striated. Obliterated and striated. This is more lapidary knapping work, okay? So this was probably ground into shape before they started knapping it. Certainly was buffed afterwards. Now for the creme de la creme, I've got a Jim Hopper agate basin here. It's my favorite piece in the whole shop that's modern. And the entire blank on these is ground into shape. So it's pretty obvious that this ridge has been obliterated and removed. This is obliterated and there. Well, it's not really removed. It's not there to begin with when they start knapping. It's this rough sanded surface all over the entire blade. So this is what lapidary knapping looks like, or slab sawn pieces, under the microscope. I'm going to try to do some more videos like this over the next coming weeks. But for now, if you want to see more of what we've got to share with the community, don't forget to like and subscribe to the page. If you're interested in those 2 books by John Whittaker, there's a link in the comment section. It'll take you to Amazon to where you can find out where to buy those. They're 2 books that I think are indispensable for any collection to have in their library, simply so you have a good reference material on how flint knapping is actually done, all of the techniques and variations on a theme. Thank you so much, and y'all have a good day.